I know you're going just as crazy as I am after looking at that title, but it is true. Dr. Helmut Marko is back on the Inside Line F1 podcast. And you know the best part? This particular episode is just a teaser. That's right, we caught up with him after the Dutch Grand Prix, where Red Bull Racing lost to McLaren by over 22 seconds, their biggest margin of loss to any team since 2022. And we wanted to know, what is the mood like in the team? How do they look at this? How do they get back? How do they look at someone like Kimi Antonelli getting his seat in Formula One? And when do you nurture a young driver and fast track them into Formula One? There's more on Sergio Perez, there's more on Max Verstappen, but that is just in this part, and that's only in a few odd minutes. After that, we have a bigger conversation with Dr. Helmut Marko coming up in a few days' time, where we touch up on the 20 years of Red Bull racing. It's been such a great journey for Red Bull, and we have Dr. Marko touching up upon the few critical moments that made it happen, the turning points, signing Adrian Newey, what's it going to be like without him, were there a few engine deals that didn't go through that they wanted to, was there a driver who Red Bull wanted but they didn't get, and also more on how Lando Norris almost got into a Red Bull racing car. All of that and more will be a part of part 2, but now let's get to part 1 that's come up after the Dutch GP. Here's Dr. Helmut Marko for you, unfiltered. Let's get in. Dr. Marko, excuse me. I firstly want to ask you about the Dutch GP that just went by. It's interesting because now you finally have, unfortunately, the largest margin of loss to any team that Red Bull has had since 2022, since the new regulations came in. And I want to know what the mood in the team is like. Are you guys happy that there's competition or just unhappy with the way the car's working? What do you feel in the team right now?
First of all, it was a clear victory from McLaren. And the 22 second is only half the story, because if Lando would have had a better or a good start, the distance would have been even more, and that is alarming. But we have a very big team, we have very bright people, and we believe, first of all, the setup from Max was not the right one. He had too much wing, and it didn't help our tire degradation, because the tire wear was much less than expected. The circuit suits McLaren, I would say, very much. The temperature were also in favor of McLaren. So we believe we can fight back, but we have to find out why we lost the balance in our car. I would say since it's either China or Suzuka, and the upgrades we brought, they were theoretically improvement, but in reality it just changed the balance, and the balance not to the better, and that we have to find out what happened, and we have to give Max in the future a more competitive car so we can fight McLaren again.
That's a very interesting explanation. And you said Max in the future. If I can just pick up one key off-track story that came up from the Dutch Grand Prix. Toto Wolff said he met with Team Verstappen in the summer break. Max turned back and said, "What meeting are you talking of?" when he was asked about this meeting. What do you think is actually happening there? Are Mercedes actively trying to chase Max even though he's got a contract till 2028? Or what's the scenario playing out like? Why is Toto Wolff pretty much every second race talking of how much he's wanting Max in Mercedes?
I mean, he wouldn't be a good team principal if he wouldn't try to get Max. I think every top team would like to have Max. And the other story is all the people live in Monte Carlo. Monte Carlo, if there's not a Grand Prix, is quite a quiet place. There are not so many coffee shops, so it's just natural, that you run into each other. And of course, Toto makes out the story of it. And on the other hand, Jos Verstappen, I think, is a bigger fan of Toto than he is from Christian.
Oh yes, we've been hearing all those stories. But under what scenario, Dr. Marco, do you think Max could even think of leaving such a competitive unit like Red Bull? And yes, like we know the contract is till 28, but why does even Jos get involved in these discussions? Are there some scenarios playing out in Jos's head? And then of course those reports about having performance clauses, which even Christian spoke about at Sanford.
Every contract with a top Formula One driver has exit clauses, which are mainly based on performance. So the question why Jos and so on, that you have to ask Jos, but at the moment, Max is focused to win the championship, as the team is focused to win this championship, and we have to look forward. And 2026 are coming new rules, so nobody knows at the moment who will have, excuse me, a competitive engine. We are, of course, what happened 2014 when all of a sudden the engine we used was at least 50 horsepower or more behind and was not reliable. So there is some, you really don't know what will happen, and that you look around what's happening is also clear. But at the moment, everything is clear. Max will drive for Red Bull Racing next season, and we have to give him a car that he can win, and then all these rumors will, I think, stop immediately.
If I can ask you a question in this regard, because performance clauses or exit clauses is something that the media just throws around loosely to explain why Max is staying or leaving, or in this case, Vettel in 2014 stayed or left. What are you able to sort of give some examples of what a clause could be like?
No, I mean, of course, I don't want to discuss such clauses, but they are based on performance, So if the team doesn't provide a car where the driver can be in the front, and that is normally a reason why he could leave.
But now that we have seen Max clear the air that he's staying for a bit, I want to talk about another young driver, Dr. Marco, that's coming up on the radar. Some call him a mini Max, in a way, if that's the right way to put it. Kimi Antonelli. I want to talk about you and building up young drivers in a case like Max as well. When do you see that a driver is ready? When you see someone like Kimi, who's only done Formula 2 half a season now, before that he was in Formula 3. How do you get a sense of this guy is ready to be put into Formula One? How did you do that with Max?
I mean, I'm not so informed about the details from Antonelli. I know one of the results, he was testing a lot in a 2-year-old Formula One car. But if someone has a talent and the team is brave enough to do it, I mean, we showed it with Max, and then it's working. And I think it's the right approach. If someone is coming up, doesn't matter how old he is, when he has a talent, then let's get him in the car.
Do you think that Mercedes are learning from your experiment with Max?
For sure, it helps them to make their decision.
Was Kimi Antonelli on your radar at any point, Dr. Marco, given how Red Bull has such a competitive and an expansive junior driver program?
No, he was driving for Tony Kart. Tony Kart in the past had a cooperation with Ferrari. And of course, we watched a little bit, but you can't have older drivers, especially if they're so young. And Ferrari obviously didn't take Antonelli, even though they had first choice, and it was then Mercedes who signed him up. And now, but let's see, he did very well, but let's see what he's doing in Formula One.
And just on that, Dr. Marco, in the case of Max, what did you see in him early on that made you go, even though this guy is only 16, I want him in my Formula One car? What would you see from a talent like that gets you to make that decision?
I mean, we had been in discussion with Max and with Jos for quite a while, also during his go-kart area. Normally, or at that time, we didn't get involved with go-karters because we believe it's too early, but things are changing nowadays. But the main reason why we decided to put him in the Formula One car was race at Norrisring, Germany, F3 race. It was wet, it was raining, it was less raining, and he was a class on his own. I mean, he was a second or 2 seconds faster than anybody else in this field. And there was also Ocon and some other competitive drivers. And the way he controlled the car under very difficult conditions, that made me, and we changed. We were talking about supporting him in F2 and so on, and said, no, we go directly to. But I think that's part of the question. He said already, that's part of his story of Red Bull Racing for me, Max Verstappen.
Dr. Marko, we all know the level that Max tends to perform, even when he's in sync or not in sync with the car. But looking at the other teams, McLaren, for example, having both their drivers consistently give podiums and be in the points as well, what is the performance benchmark for Max's teammate that Red Bull as a team expects, regardless of whoever it is?
First of all, I don't think it's nice to be teammate to Max nowadays. I honestly believe there are not many drivers, maybe a Hamilton or maybe Lando could be near to him, but only near to him. So, first of all, the driver next to Max has to have a lot of self-confidence, and he has to admit that he's driving with the fastest driver in Formula One at the moment. And to beat him is very, very difficult. So just do your best and see where you can finish. And that, we have to say, managed Sergio for quite a long period, longer than all the other drivers which were next to Max. And in Zandvoort, he proved that he did what was the maximum for him and from the car. So that we expect to be reasonably near to Max. We don't expect him to beat, but reasonable next to Max.
Man, that was just so much fun interviewing Dr. Helmut Marko. And you know the best part? This is just part 1 of part 2. A bigger episode with him is coming up in a few days' time, where we touch up upon the history of Red Bull, the 20 years of Red Bull Racing, and how they became the team that they are now. We touch up upon so many stories, including engine deals that didn't go through, drivers that they wanted in the car but eventually didn't get, and the pivotal moments that made Red Bull Racing into such a dominant force. All of that and more will be a part of part 2. So you better stay updated with that. And how can you do that? It's very simple. Just subscribe to the Inside Line F1 podcast on all of our social media channels and on whatever podcast listening platform you listen to on. And we shall keep you posted for when the second part comes in. Thank you for listening, everyone, and I shall see you shortly. Bye-bye.